than nothing.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Squat Cobbler, episode 59. I'm Kelly Toole at KELLYTHUL on Twitter.
And I'm Mike at Official Pagan on everything. And I have a lot of notes tonight.
Just a little bit, so payback's a bitch, Mike. So all I gotta say is we're doing our prisoner exchange, and upon reflection, our last two, you should probably, as we get these up on YouTube, or if you're listening off the blog and the podcasts, I would probably schedule your evening around listening to episodes 58, and 59 together, because they're really bookends. There's a lot of complimentary work about this. Last time we got together on our exchange, we talked about Birdsum. These were long, dark, complex songs, and so now we'll follow that up with the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, The History of the Bonzos, which is a collection of their work, which includes a song that's 20 seconds long and is largely based on cabaret, vaudeville, and music hall music. So the parallels just never stop. So these are basically the same.
For a second, I was like, wow, if I had known how similar these albums were, we should have spaced them out.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time keeping track of my notes between the differences between the two.
And also, I should let the squatties know, I have a cold right now, so I'm sorry for however my voice may sound.
Appreciate you toughing it out, though, Mike, for tonight, and pretty much the wrong episode for you to have.
So, all right, so here's the thing. So I love this whole prisoner exchange thing. When you came up with this idea, I thought it was great, and I'm having so much fun doing it. One thing that I have, now, I've given you two albums that have long tracks on them, but there's an album that I really want to do that I veered away from because the album itself is very long. So I decided not to introduce that. And now that you've done this, I'm reconsidering.
I think that's fair.
The difference is, though, the album I was going to recommend is only like 14 or 15 tracks, but clocks in at over 3 hours.
That'll be some serious homework for me on that. I look forward to that. So we're going to probably need to get going on this because this
yeah, let's not take too much time. But I will say, just top line reaction, I really enjoyed this. I had no idea what the hell I was getting into. Never heard of this band before, but really enjoyed it.
I'm super fired up to hear that. I mean, it was a complete coin toss for me whether this would, we've talked a little bit about at some point, there's going to be an album in this exchange where it speaks to one of us but not the other at all. This one could fit that category really, really well. So I'm really glad you did. And as I was kind of going back and prepping for it, I listened to it on vinyl, which is God's way to listen to music because it's based on fossil fuels and Thomas Edison, both made by God. And so listen to it on vinyl, and it's done the appropriate double album way that sides 1 and 4 on one album and 2 and 3 on the other so that you could stack them on your record player and let them drop and play. Also handy on this album because after you listen to side 1, in my opinion, you can kind of slide that album back in and slide it in the sleeve and then just go side 2 and 3. And maybe not so much on side 4, but we'll see as we kind of get through it. But what I was struck by as I re-listened to it to get ready again is I really, really like this album. There's a bunch of really fun stuff about it. This is a compilation. The Bonzo Dog Doodah Band was a going concern from about 1966 to 1970. They appeared in Magical Mystery Tour movie by the Beatles. Neil Innes, who worked a lot with Monty Python, is a significant component of Bonzos, as is Vivian Stanchel. They are the primary writers, and I'll kind of call them out as we go through here, and influencers. But they are this very strange amalgamation of horns and ukuleles and banjos and guitar and vaudeville music and music hall music and rock, and it's all over the place. So here we go. And we'll start off. So this is a compilation album, and there's really no better way to start a compilation album than with a song called The Intro and the Outro. This is actually one of my favorite songs on this album. It got them in trouble politically in England because they talk about an English politician whose last name was Hogg, and they introduce him. Basically, this whole song is them introducing the band, and they just keep going and going and going, and introducing John Wayne on the xylophone and looking very relaxed, Adolf Hitler on vibes. And they mentioned, I believe it's Ernest Hogg, on the piggy grunt. And actually the politician threatened the Bonzos about the use of his name in their song. But it's just this kind of little intro, and it's basically a song of introductions, and it gets more and more hilarious through there. And this is a song written by this one actually was written by Vivian Stanchel. and it's kind of a fun little way to start the album. What did you think of the intro and the outro, Mike?
All right, so getting into this, one of the interesting things that I had to contend with is that this album is not available digitally. So I had to look up every song individually. It wasn't too difficult. Most of them are on iTunes, just from the original albums that they're culled from. A handful of them, though, were difficult to find because apparently they're from side projects, and they're tracks that appear later on this, so I had to find those on YouTube. What was interesting, though, is for the most part, I didn't even have to scroll through the albums. I could do a song title search because some of these have very interesting song title names. And typically when you look something up on iTunes, for any Apple Music subscribers out there, it'll give you other similar songs or similar song titles. For nearly all of these, when I would search the song title, nothing else came up. It was just this individual song. And that started with the intro and the outro. Apparently, there is nothing else on Apple Music that is called that. I thought it was a really interesting title. I wasn't sure going into this. I'm not familiar with the band. Had no idea of what they sounded like. So I am, because there's so many songs on here, I'm going to rely heavily on my notes tonight. So I liked the old school band intros. Like, I like that it started that way. It reminds me whenever I go and see, like, I don't even want to say older, but any band pre-2000s when they introduce all the band members, because that hasn't really been a thing so much for more current bands. It put me in mind of that, and I liked, as you mentioned, how they kept going and adding people to it. My first note on this is, how did they get Hitler in the band?
It was a big band. There were a lot of, and they were a little fuzzy on who was all in the band.
I felt like, for whatever reason, Hitler was the one where I was like, how'd they land him? They mentioned Count Basie in it, so I am not particularly knowledgeable of the Count's material, but I have been to Count Basie Theater in New Jersey. I went to a Kevin Smith Q&A stand-up thing there a couple of years ago. So those are the two sort of pickups from that for me. One of the things that the song establishes that I really enjoyed, and this is my only quibble, I guess, at it being a compilation versus a studio album, I don't know if this is just the songs that they chose or if this is reflective of entire albums or the entire catalog. But as you mentioned, they mentioned different instruments and who played them. This is musically a really eclectic collection, and I really like that. I like that there's a lot of like non-traditional instruments on some things, or the way that instruments are used isn't always the way they would be expected, to give it sort of a quirky identity of its own. I really like that. I don't know if those particular songs are called from one or two albums, if the whole catalog is like that. So that's my only sort of quibble. But I really like this song. I love that Hitler's in the band. You don't normally get to see other sides of people like that. And as we mentioned, again, coupling this with the last episode, sometimes you have to separate the artist from the art.
There you go. And he plays the vibes, and he's pretty good. And he's very relaxed, which is important. And it's
now, everybody take that out of context where Kelly just said Hitler's pretty good.
Yes. Or not. And again, this is a good indicator of kind of what's to come because of the humor and approaches. And so they're going this person on that and this person on that. And then you get towards the end and you got Roy Rogers on Trigger. And so it's just all kinds of fun stuff. So this is not serious music, folks, but it is really crazy enjoyable for me. I picked this album up. Actually, I was on a college visit and went to a big record store and came across it. And I had a little bit of familiarity, but it looked really cool. And I got it. And like I said, I just fell in love as I got through, particularly the first two sides of this album. There's just a lot of magic going on. It's roughly chronological. We'll kind of throw in there. It is a compilation, so you do actually get some side projects in there. This isn't one of them. This is a straight Bonzo song, so that's pretty cool. So we get that. It's definitely got that. I do think you need to consider for Pagan Mike, though, at the end of a concert, kind of picking up that little musical riff they got going there and introducing your band using the intro and the outro. So something to think about.
I might.
So now we'll move on to Rockalizer Baby. So now we actually get into there's only a couple moments where these brush into closer to traditional rock pop music. Rockalizer Baby is this. They never completely go there. There's always a little bit of Bonzo and everything. But Rockalizer Baby is closer to more of a straight pop rock song written by both Vivian Stanchel and Neil Innes. And it is a rocker sort of, and it kind of immediately changes the tone a little bit. But I think kind of a strong little fun number, just kind of a bright little rock song. What are your thoughts?
Again, liked it, and I got to go back through my notes, but I don't think there was anything on this album that would be a skip for me. I liked all of these songs. In fact, I liked them so much that today, when preparing for this, I did revisit a couple of them, but I even listened to some other songs that weren't on this album because I'm already interested in checking out more of this band. The one thing, though, again, with this being a compilation, my note on this song is, were the individual studio records these were pulled from, were they concept albums?
There was some themes to some. There was Donut and Granny's Greenhouse and Gorilla and a couple others where there was some kind of thematic connectivity a little bit, but never kind of strong concept.
Okay, because there is a lot of spoken word segments and skits and things like that that are peppered throughout this. So I didn't, and I enjoyed all of it, but I didn't know if when I listened to the full studio records, if these are actually pulled from concept records or is each track standalone.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate in terms of the Bonzo's lifespan and where they came in because it was before you kind of started to get producers and agents that could really know how to promote people. And so they kind of blazed the trail in this space. And they lost a couple members to somebody else who was a little bit better, better positioned commercially. But this, there's really nobody better than the Bonzos for this very strange space that they operate in. And they, from a stage standpoint, started to introduce things like thought bubbles where they would have, wow, I'm really being creative as a thought bubble that they would hold over their head when they're playing a solo and those kinds of things. And Roger Ruskin Spear liked to play with explosives and robots. It was some of his things. So their stage typically featured an explosion or two and various kind of animatronic kind of action going on.
Hearing that makes me love this band even more. Makes me feel even closer to them since I do enjoy electrocuting myself on stage. Or have done that numerous times.
Yep. So yeah, you are Bonzo material without a doubt. We have talked in the past around dramatic shift in tone on albums. This compilation, because it's a compilation, and two, it's because it's the Bonzos, is riddled with that. So we had this kind of peppy little fun song to begin with, the intro and the outro, kind of almost a more rocky poppy song with Rockalizer Baby. And now we move into Sport, the Odd Boy, which I think is a song you might identify with, Mike. We'll see a little bit on this. But it is done almost in a minstrel, medieval. There's harpsichord, there's organs, there's kind of that kind of minstrelly kind of delivery of it. And it's a song about, it's the odd boy who doesn't like sport, and sport makes you masculine, and they sing about how it makes you masculine, and kind of begin to infuse again. We had Hitler in the first song. There's a little German kind of get them to the shower stuff going on in Sport as well. So it's a little dark on that point, but it's basically the idea of maybe there's an individual who's a little more artistic, but it's like you need to know sports and it makes you masculine and it's good. And it's a super fun song for me. One of my favorites actually on this album.
I have a few quick things with this one. One, just want to point out to everybody once again, Kelly's pro-Nazi. Two, so again, I really didn't think this was going to happen this much, but linking it back to the Burzum album, the keys and the flute and everything in the beginning actually is similar to things you would hear on a Burzum record. So that is what popped into my head when I first started listening to this. I also love the abrupt change in musical style in the last minute of the song. And of course, I can relate to not enjoying sports.
Yeah. And we're not done with abrupt changes towards the end of songs on this album.
No, not at all. But I really enjoyed it, especially on this song.
So then we move into, my guest, as a young Mike Belinsky begins to search iTunes or YouTube for song titles. Again, sorry for all the extra work on this one. Noises from the Leg, I'm going to assume did not have a lot of parallels out there. That was probably a title that stood alone.
Honestly, it's not until it's well into the second side before there was anything else that came up.
So here we get a bit of a continuation of that. There's a portion of the minstrel kind of feel to it. This is where we get the first introduction of, there's a lot of spoken word activity in this album. This is one at the beginning of the song where you're getting kind of a dog howling and this guy going, "I found him, sir. God, I wish I hadn't." And then begin to go into the music. And so you get this kind of minstrelly stuff going on. And then you get the introduction of 1966, 68, synthesizer-y kind of dial tuning going on in it. And so it's a little bit of a combination of minstrel and electronic, and another very fun song for me.
So my notes for this one are Monty Python meets Mick Jagger.
Fits. Good.
So, because there's a Monty Python-esque element to the spoken stuff in the beginning and all that, and then Mick Jagger. So you have the sort of dial synth sounds in this thing. I don't know how familiar you are with Mick Jagger. Mick Jagger did a solo release called Invocation of My Demon Brother that is made up entirely of him playing around with an old school synthesizer. That's the whole project sounds exactly like that one element. Yeah, it's like 12 or 13 minutes long. It was the soundtrack to a short film. Very few people have heard it, but it is that Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones. I love playing it for people because it makes them mad. First, they get really angry that I'm playing that, and then I explain to them that that's Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, and they don't believe me, and I have to prove it to them. Imagine that sound as one really long track. That's Mick Jagger. So yeah, it's Monty Python meets Mick Jagger for me. And again, really enjoying it still.
So sport and it's an odd boy who doesn't like sport, and noises from the leg were both Vivian Stanchel compositions. So now we move back to Neil Innes. And so these are two brilliant writers. Unfortunately, Vivian's no longer with us. Neil is, and Neil does some amazing stuff. He has a dead-on Elton John impersonation. There's a song called Joffrey Daniel that is a complete parody of that. Also, Neil was the energy behind the Ruddles, the parody of the Beatles, that kind of a Monty Python, Neil Innes combination. He worked a lot with the Python group. The next song is a Neil Innes composition, and it's called King of the Scruff. And this is beachy kind of songs, and it's basically the song about a guy who had a lot of acne and pimples and dandruff, and he ended up being the hero because he could bury the bad guys in his dandruff. Sung in a painful falsetto, but another major shift in tone, but a really funny and fun song.
So my first thought on this when this song started is, are there videos for any of these songs, like music videos?
Quite a few, particularly when we get we'll get to Canyons of Your Mind in a little bit. Spoiler alert, big favorite of that song. Lots of Canyons of Your Mind videos, and absolutely worth a watch. I think for the blog post, there's so many videos to include. But I think Canyons of Your Mind and a song not on this compilation, but Beautiful People, which is basically they reunited in 2008. And it's a song about let's kill all the beautiful people. And we'll include that YouTube track as well, because it includes the chorus of killing all the beautiful people. He's like, sing along with me, children. And there's a children's choir that sings along with him about killing the beautiful people, which is nice. But so I got Hitler and killing people, so I'm having a good show. But yeah, there are a lot of videos on these songs. You're going to definitely find it on intro and the outro, and I'll flag the rest of them from there. King of the Scruff, I don't know there's a ton of them, but this is a fun song for me.
I feel like the visual element to the lyrics in this would really lend itself to a lot of music videos. My only other note on this song, and you kind of already foreshadowed it, there's an almost Beach Boys-esque element to the harmonies later in the song. If you took away the sax parts that come later in the song, it'd be very Beach Boys.
Yep, my gift to you. Absolutely. I think this will be our only, well, I don't know, you work hard for the Beach Boy parallels, but I believe this will be our only Beach Boy parallel. I
think it is. I have so many notes, though, I could still be surprised.
So we'll move into, okay, gang, we're still on side one, by the way. A label dental fricative. This is actually not a Bonzo song. It's Vivian Stanchel. It was a band that it was Vivian Stanchel and the Sheen Head Band. Because after Vivian left the Bonzos, at some point he shaved off all of his hair. And so it was several members of his new group did that as well. Peppy little number, really quick, clever lyrics, fun, catchy little tune, moves along really, really quick. Again, another major shift in tone, but, Big Fat Fred puts birds on his head is one of the main lyrics of it, which is kind of clever and quick. And it's typical Vivian Stanchel and good stuff. So I actually did label Dental Fricative, while not an official Bonzo song, it's a really good addition to this album.
At this point in the album, this is some of my favorite guitar work so far.
Yeah, it is actually really, really quick and good on this song. So we get this kind of quick, good guitar stuff going on with label Dental Fricative, and then we swing back to the music hall vaudeville stuff again with Hello Mabel, which features some shifts in tone overall. Kind of starts out as kind of 50s noir kind of stuff, And then we get into kind of a ukulele wah-wah stuff at the end. Another song that's got some great YouTube videos on.
This song, I really enjoyed the sound effects in it. I thought, again, it made it very visual. Like, it's easy to visualize a lot of these lyrics and a lot of the elements of these songs. So again, going back to the whole video thing, there's also some elements, particularly in this song, and I guess you could say it about a few with the vaudeville elements, but particularly in this song to me, there was a couple of little moments that put me in mind of like Tom Waits kind of thing.
I could see that. I could absolutely see that. Hello Babel, Neil Innes song, by the way. And so the last song on this side is a Viv song, by the way, and this is Look at Me, I'm Wonderful. And we're going to get a couple of these structures throughout the album where there's a lot of kind of spoken word or a cappella that kind of shifts into something. This is one of the stranger songs on the album, but you get this kind of initial a cappella, look at me, I'm wonderful, and things going on. And it's basically a guy preparing to go on stage, and then he goes on stage and begins to kind of perform a little bit more. And so we're going to see this happen a couple other times in the album. It's a kind of an interesting mix on it. It does kind of beg out for a little more of a visual element, but this one I think holds up well, just audio only. There's one a little bit later that I think really hurts with us not being able to see what's kind of going on. But it's this nice combination of a little bit of a cappella at the beginning going into this singer going out the stage, and a theme that you'll see in a lot of Vivian stuff about, hey, I'm a big star, I'm super famous, full of myself, and that kind of characterization. So it's fun stuff. Another good song for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this too. Again, with the way that it's set up, it's easy to visualize what's happening in the song. I like the humor as well. It put me in mind of the pop singer Robbie Williams. He has a number of songs that are similar type of approach, humorous, sort of self-deprecating about what a big star he is. So it put me in mind of that.
So endeth side 1. Sides 2 and 3 of this album are my favorite parts of the album. I really enjoyed side 1. For me, sides 2 and 3 are where the true magic of the Bonzos happen. And it starts off with one of the most amazing songs ever. And I spoiled this a little bit in our last review that I said, hey, my next album features the worst guitar solo recorded ever. And that occurs in this fine thing. Vivian Stanchel can pull off a pretty fun parody Elvis. And this is an Elvis song written by Vivian called Canyons of Your Mind, that Vivian does the full hardcore Elvis through most of the song. And then they go to a break where they hand it over to Neil, who's the guitarist, to do a solo. And oh my goodness, it is horrific. It is another one that from a video standpoint, you can catch some really great videos, oddly enough in black and white, but you can catch some of the videos of this song, and it's super fun to watch. And this is a really, really great song. I really enjoyed this song.
Yeah, really great song. Great lyric in one particular. There's a lot of great lyrics in it, but one particular line that stuck out to me in this song was something about her hair smelling like giraffe.
Yes.
that was the one that really struck me on this one.
Yeah, and there's another lyric is through the mountains of your chest, and as he's singing that, the background singers are going ba 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 ba. It's really fun stuff. It's good. It's good stuff. Canyons of Your Mind, folks. If nothing else, do a search on that and listen to it. Super, super fun song. So now we're going to turn to what will become the first song that's not written by a member of the Bonzos. One of the things that happened is that as they got started, Vivian Stanchel would go down to some of the marketplaces in London where there would be people selling records, and he would go back and buy music from the 20s and the 30s, and he goes, hey, we should do this song. I think this would be a really fun song for us to do. And this is the first one of those. There are several on this album, and they are all pretty awesome. This one's called Jollity Farm, and it is about a farm, and it's about all the little pigs. They grunt and howl, the cats meow, the dogs bow wow, and then eventually they break it down to all the little pigs. They grunt and howl, and they go grunt, howl, and it's a really super fun song, very much in that kind of music hall vaudeville kind of sound, and this is one of those that they took and the Bonzos did, and they did a great job. Heavy ukulele in this, which I'm a big fan of. So Jollity Farm's a really fun song. I
really enjoyed this song as well. It, in my mind, made a strong parallel to a certain alternative rock band from the 90s who have an animal-related song that was a pretty big hit for them. I'm not going to say their name because they have tried to publicly disparage my band. So I don't want to give them any publicity to the Squatties. But if you listen to the song, you're familiar with 90s alternative music, you'll probably make the same error.
Again, super fun, and we're going to see this type of structure coming up a couple more times in the album, and basically every time they come up, they're pretty fun.
Sides 2 and 3 are my favorites as well. I have really strange notes about some of these songs coming up, just to give you a heads up.
So my hunch is one of the next two songs might be the resonant of some of the, and I'm going to guess it's actually not this song, but the next one in particular. But we now move into You Done My Brain In, which again is another favorite of mine on this album. This is Neil Innes' composition. It is closer to a rock song. You'll get this in some of the different places. So a little bit like Rockalizer Baby, this kind of gets back a little bit more into that mode. Probably a little even more punchier than that. But so for God's sake, give me a break, let me crawl away and die. You've done my brain in. Super fun stuff. Drives through pretty strong. It is, from a Bonzo standpoint, one of their more rocking efforts. And again, another dramatic shift in tone coming off of Jollity Farm, but a fun song.
I enjoyed the song as well. I absolutely love the drums in this. Someone must have sampled the drums. I'm not saying that because it reminds me of something, just because it's such a catchy drum beat. And there's a perfect just drum segment right near the beginning that would make a perfect lift for a sample to loop it. So someone had to have.
If they haven't, they should, because it would be perfect.
Yeah.
Fantastic for that. And we'll move on to the next song, which is actually an Innes substantial collaboration. My Pink Half of the Drain Pipe, which I'm going to assume again from an iTunes search, provided limited additional results.
Correct.
You get the kind of big throaty vocal that Vivian will throw out from time to time. It's a combination of there's singing and there's kind of spoken word. It goes back and forth. It's kind of almost psychedelic imagery. Crazy song. A lot of stuff going on in it. Super creative. And My Pink Half of the Drain Pipe. I may paint it blue. My pink half of the drain pipe keeps me safe from you. Is just super cool stuff. So I'm a big fan of the song.
I was a big fan of the song as well. I'm about to make some weird parallels. This is where my notes get a little strange. So, during the singing parts, not the spoken word parts, but the actual singing, the way the drums and keys play off of each other is very, very similar to 90s era Bowie. Like Outside and Earthling records in particular, there's a lot of that. Like the sped up drums with the slower piano melodies on top of them. That's a staple of that era of Bowie stuff. So just a strange connection that I made when listening to it.
I'm going to have to go back and re-listen. I didn't pull that out initially, but I could see it. But we'll have to go back and do that. But yeah, I could absolutely see that. So we got Neil and Viv working together again on Mr. Apollo, which is definitely, all these songs have humor to them. This is one that kind of goes hardcore into the humor space. And it's this, it's the whole Charles Atlas, Mr. Apollo, make yourself big and strong. This is this is true Bonzo dog doo-dah band music. I have seen Mr. Apollo uproot trees with his bare hands, as kind of they start at the beginning. It goes through a lot of tempo changes from there. There's some spoken word stuff where and possibly of an album with crazy, amazing lyrics throughout. This is the winner for me, because it's a lot about Mr. Apollo's going to make you a better man, make you strong, and you can kick sand in their face, kick, ha ha ha, kind of stuff. Super fun. But as they get to the tail end and he goes, wrestle poodles and win, which is, I think, is magic. Love it. More rockery-ish. It's got a little bit more. That's not more of a musical. It's got more of a rock thing, but it's, because particularly at the beginning, it starts with some kind of serious guitar stuff, and it jumps around in tone quite a bit. A pretty good song in my opinion.
So because there's so many tracks on this, I didn't get a chance to listen to a lot of them multiple times the way I typically do and really familiarize myself with it. Somehow I totally missed this song, probably because of the way that I had to go about finding all of them. It wasn't until this morning, going through my notes to get ready for the show, that I realized I only had notes for 34 songs instead of 35. So I had to figure out what I was missing. It was this song. And this ended up being one of my favorite songs on the album. I really love this song, and especially that opening guitar riff. It's very doomy, Black Sabbath-y kind of a guitar riff. Not like any of the other guitar stuff that you hear anywhere else on this record. And that's what I love about this. It's very, very eclectic musically. It's also very impressive musically. Like, these guys aren't slouches as musicians. So to hear them do, not only, do that, but to do it well and incorporate it so well into the song, I really enjoyed it. I really love this song.
Yeah, and so we get that kind of Black Sabbath punch. We get some power in there. We get some soaring vocals. So obviously, all of a sudden we swing back to music hall. Hunting Tigers out in India, which again, for side 2, there are 10 songs on side 2. Half of them are covers. Jollity Farm and Hunting Tigers are the first 2 we'll talk about. So this is Viv going out and buying albums and bringing it back. A little bit of history for you folks. I'm incredibly old, so my first MP3 player had limited storage. When I could have an electronic device that could have songs on it, and would have that and would play it in my car for my daughters, who at that point were very, very young. And Hunting Tigers out in India, huge hit. On that very small, that I could have about 30 songs on the original MP3 player that I had. Hunting Tigers, Raspberry Beret by the Hindu Love Gods, Veronica by Elvis Costello, Run Run Away by Slade. All these were on there, but Hunting Tigers out in India, big hit with the kids. They loved it.
Nice. This is another one where I really like the guitar riff in it. I had no idea this was a cover because I didn't really do much research into this, so didn't know it was a cover. Really like the guitar riff in it, though. If it was played a little bit heavier, it's easy to imagine this as a hard rock song in and of itself.
It could totally make that transfer. And this is another one that you're going to be able to find plenty of YouTube videos with a bit of a stage show as well for Hunting Tigers out in India.
Nice.
So I mentioned a little bit earlier that Viv's pretty good at doing Elvis, so certainly why don't we just do an Elvis song? So Suspicion is the next song on here, obviously another cover. Suspicion actually was not a Bonzo song, but a Vivian Stanchel spinoff. And it was Vivian Stanchel and his Gargantuan Chums was the name of the band, and that's where Suspicion came from. But it's Vivian doing his kind of quasi-Elvis. I wouldn't say a straightforward cover. It's a kind of cover you're going to get from somebody from the Bonzo Dog Doo-Dah Band doing Elvis. But Suspicion, it's a good song.
It is a good song. This is the first one that was difficult for me to track down, only because there's like a million songs called Suspicion. So it made searching for this, and also because it's from a side project, it made searching for this one a little bit more difficult. So I had to hit up YouTube for this one. What stood out to me from this song, though, is the electric organ in parts of it reminded me of the Doors.
I can see that. Yeah, absolutely.
Another one of the weird parallels I'm going to make.
There's plenty of room for those weird parallels in this album. We're back to Coverland. Actually, no. Mr. Slater's Parrot is Vivian Stanchel. Let me double check here. Make sure I have my notes right on that. Yeah, Viv Stanchel composition. But it's in the spirit of Hunting Tigers out in India and some of the other ones. Another one that's probably from a song title search, pretty limited in additional results. And it does feature a parrot-ish kind of participating in the singing of it. But it's in, again, that music hall vaudeville kind of thing, and another fun song for me. I like this song quite a bit.
I like the song as well. I love the false stop, and then the song starts up again.
Yeah, that happens a couple times here where you're like, this is done, and then all of a sudden, and when it restarts, sometimes it restarts in a whole different place. But
yeah,
this one kind of
a few times. But I think this is the strongest example.
Yeah, really, really good song. Super fun. So Laughing Blues, and this is actually another cover, the Bonzo interpretation of a song called Laughing Blues, where you're going to get instrumentality, parroting, laughing, and all that. And just so you know, as I kind of re-prepped for the show, playing it on vinyl as God has intended, Jabba the Cat, one of our cats, was down here. He was not a fan of this song. So we got later into some of the kind of hardcore instrumentality mimicking laughing. He was clearly irritated and disturbed. I did not share his concern. I like the song quite a bit, but it kind of starts off with this kind of bluesy, fun piano, and it gets into some horns and kind of stuff going on. Again, a Bonzo interpretation of a previous song, and pretty fun.
I enjoyed this as well. My note on it is sad marching band music.
Fair. I think that's a good capture. It's a good.
So, I feel like that sums it up.
Fair enough. So wrapping up side 2, we have Narcissus. This is a 20-second long song.
Let's talk about it for 15 minutes.
Yeah, we should. It's kind of like our Alice Cooper paranormal conversation, but a good end, but there's so much on this side that's it's crazy strong. This is a nice kind of fun little snippet at the end, kind of fun to listen to. But we're basically prepping to flip the album.
Yeah, I like that it gives you this short little intro or outro to the album. The sort of banter going back and forth reminded me of some stuff that you hear on like in a more modern example, like on Tenacious D records and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good parallel. So we flip the album and we move to side 3, and it starts with I'm the Urban Spaceman. So of everything that's on this, so had you heard anything on this album?
No.
No. This would have been on side 3. First song on side 3 was in my mind, the only thing that I thought you might have heard was this song, because from the Bonzo standpoint, this was their biggest hit. And it's I'm the Urban Spaceman. It's a Neil Innes song. It's a pop song. It's fun. It's really well constructed. It features kind of all the goodness that is the Bonzos on it. Neil sings this song, and it's a really very good song. And there's a reason it did well on the radio at the time, because it's a very good song.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. To me, there's a definite Beatles influence on a lot of these songs, but to me, on this one, the Beatles influence is the strongest and most prominent.
Yeah, I could see that, and that was, this is hearkening to what will happen when Neil creates the Ruddles, which is a parody band of the Beatles, and does an amazing job in kind of completely nailing the Beatle essence in a Bonzo Dog Tuda band kind of way. So crazy fun. But this actually did well on the radio. Another one you're going to be able to find on YouTube pretty easily. We return to Viv. Not probably surprising this next song is written by him, because it kind of fits in there. I think one of the funniest songs on this album. It's called Bad Blood. So in a way, to me, it is in the family of the Ballad of Jessie Jane by Alice Cooper. It's in that spirit, but it's the story of a one-eyed half-breed amputee who is wronged and is looking to seek out the person that wronged him. And the story goes all the way through in the song about bad blood for him trying to find the person. And he gets to the end where he finally has cornered this person, and somebody else kills him, and he's kind of bummed out. Again, some of the clever lyrics that are in this album. He sings about bad blood. It's like an egg stain on your teeth. You can lick it, but it just won't go away.
Which is a great lyric.
It is.
And my note on this is Mel inspired. I put Hillbilly Bonzo.
There you go. You've got Beach Boys and Hillbilly in the review. You got to be happy.
Yeah, everything Yelly just said about it. And I want somebody to make one-eyed half-breed, what is it, amputee?
One-eyed half-breed amputee.
I want a one-eyed half-breed amputee porn genre on Pornhub in honor of this song.
So noted. Probably not in the blog post, but so noted. I think there are a lot of songs I love on this album. Canyons of Your Mind is a super favorite, but the next song is, I think it's my favorite. It's by Viv again. It's called Tent. It again gets into that rocker peppy kind of mode, and it's I want to get you in my tent, where we can both experiment, which is a pretty good way to start a song, I think, in my opinion. Oh, wait. There are way too many songs in this album because I totally skipped. We gotta go back. We'll talk about Tent in a second. I Left My Heart in San Francisco.
I was going to say, this does not match up with my notes.
Nope. By the way, spoiler alert, I really like Tent, but we'll talk about it in a second. I Left My Heart in San Francisco. It is indeed that song. It is, again, done in the Bonzo way, where it's that kind of I'm full of myself. And it is just a wonderful beginning, because he starts to sing the lines of, the loveliness of Paris in the Vivian Stanchel kind of overproduced kind of way. And after each line he sings at the beginning, there's this kind of, he's obviously in like a nightclub, and he sings the first line and there's lots of clapping. And he sings the next line, there's lots of clapping and little side conversations like, oh, he's so good, and all that. And then they go into that. So it kind of intros into I Want to Live by That City, by the Bay, and then it stops.
This reminded me of when you go and see a classic rock band, and they have like the touring keyboard players not really in the band gets to do a solo. That's what this made me think of.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a pretty good description. It's fun. It's fairly short. There's a lot of funny going on in it from there. And then that leads us into Tent, which, spoiler alert, is a really favorite song of mine, where we talk about getting you in your tent, where we can both experiment. And let's take a taxi to my tent. A rockin' little number, kind of fun. You get a lot more of the music hall and stuff and everything. So this is back to a little bit more of the rocker stuff, but this is a really, really good song for me. Get a lot of really good saxophone in this song as well.
I like the song has almost like a punk energy to it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, because it definitely comes in, of everything we've heard so far, it is the punchiest thing so far.
Also, I have a musician friend whose name I'm not going to say because I don't know what his current relationship status is, who had sex with a groupie in a tent. This was years ago, but had sex with a groupie in a tent, and it was very cold, and something awful happened that if I described here, this would get pulled from YouTube.
So noted, and thanks for your rare self-control. I appreciate that. I think there's actually a little bit of additional tattoo material for me, where there's the line, "My love is as beautiful as a tourniquet," or tourniquet. So that's kind of a clever little turn of phrase by our Bonzo friends. And so we move from, go ahead.
Oh, it just said absolutely.
So then we move into Can Blue Men Sing the Whites, another Viv number. Big guitar at the beginning of this song, and it is this concept of white blues, which is Martin Mull also has kind of covered the white men blues genre as well later than the Bonzos as well, but Can Blue Men Sing the Whites is a Viv number. Big guitar at the beginning, bluesy, parody of blues, good song.
This might be the greatest song title ever.
Pretty solid. My Pink After the Drainpipe's pretty good too.
It is. But this is certainly my favorite song title on this album. Definitely like a top 10 of all time for me. And I love the distortion on the guitar. It's a really like heavy distortion on the guitar that you haven't heard anywhere else, or will hear anywhere else on this record. Just like a really fuzzy, definitely like overuse of the fuzz pedal on the guitar in a great way.
So we've gotten through. We're getting towards the end of side 3. You start to get a feel for what Viv numbers look like and what Neil Innes songs sound like. So if you were to guess 9 to 5 Pollution Blues, whether that was Viv or Neil, who would you think?
I don't know.
It's a Neil song.
Okay.
It is probably more of a tradition, closer to, from a Bonzo Dog Doo-Dah Band standpoint, closer to a more traditional song. This was actually, it did appear on one of Neil Innes' solo projects, which was, he formed a band called The World.
Okay, yeah, this was one that I had to look up on YouTube.
Yep. So 9 to 5 Pollution Blues. It's almost a Hendrixy kind of guitar, particularly at the beginning. Hendrixy / Bonzo, so it's a variant. But it's a good, almost more traditional rock number, but a fun song.
There's some vocal harmonies in this that made me think of like 90s grunge music. Not the song itself, just some of the vocal harmonies.
Yeah, this is interesting because there's really no parallel on the rest of this album to this song, but it's good. So I really do enjoy it. So we're back to Viv for Big Shot. This is more back to that noir kind of sound to it. Some spoken word and things going on. Lines like "Baby, you're so far out, it's beautiful," and it's this kind of clever thing going on. And again, it's this whole kind of more self-important kind of thing going on that Viv does really well. Another very fun song for me.
There's a line where he says she has the hottest lips since Hiroshima.
Yeah, which is pretty mad.
Yeah, that might be my favorite line on the album.
Tattoo material.
Yeah. And I love the saxophone in the song.
And so I mentioned a little bit earlier that there was going to be some things that, and really this is the first time that there's a song on this album that you're like, I almost need the visual to fully appreciate this song. And the song's called Release Me. It is the Please Release Me song, so this is another cover. So I'm assuming there is something pretty funny going on the stage as this is being sung. There's a kind of a jazzy finish to it, and then almost a classical music part. And this comes back to the talent of the Bonzos that they can go all over the place. But you do hear kind of laughing, which I am assuming was not embedded in the song as audio, but was actually, this was a capture more from a live performance. But there's something going on at the beginning of as he's singing this Please Release Me that is making people really, really laugh. And some of the vocal delivery is funny, but you can definitely get the sense that there's something more going on here. Unfortunately, this is one I haven't been able to find a lot of YouTube tracking on. It's a fun song. I enjoy it, But this is the basically the main song on the album where I'm like, I think I needed a visual component to completely enjoy this song.
So this song was a little bit tough for me, only because this song was the hardest to find. Like, even on YouTube, I was having difficulty finding the full track. And when I did find one that matched the runtime that's listed, I don't know if it's the actual studio version of it. The audio is really bad on the track that I listened to. If it's the correct song, though, this one has the most different vocal approach than any other track on this compilation.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's probably true studio versus live. And there's a lot of variety on this album, but this is in a whole different place than everything else. So we've knocked off 3 sides of this album. We're on the home stretch on this.
We're making pretty good time, I say, as we have 4 hours ahead of us.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of the Bonzos. I love this compilation very much. The first 3 sides of it I'm enraptured with. I had kind of remembered, I think on the 4th side I started to fade. And so we're getting probably a little bit in the later Bonzo years at this point in time. And there are good moments on this final side, but this side is overshadowed by what happens in there. There's not, whether it's Jollity Farm or Mr. Apollo or intro or the outro. This side is kind of harmed by the fact that it doesn't have this thing that, for me, just wowed me. A lot of enjoyable stuff, but we may move. We'll see. Maybe you've got longer notes on it, but we may move pretty quick through this 4th side because most of my listenings to this album really center on the first 3 sides, and I don't spend a lot of time through this last section, with the exception of one song, which we'll talk about pretty late in the discussion of the 4th side. So, first song is called "We Are Normal," which is a compilation between Vivian and Neil. In terms of it, it's a very trippy song. A lot of spoken word. Almost, it's Bonzo ambient. So you got your hillbilly ambient that you could throw at some point. I would argue this is Bonzo ambient music. And then, much like I talked about this in a past review, oddly enough, The Who occasionally shows up on songs and to interrupt them at the very end. And that's what happens on We Are Normal. At the very end of We Are Normal, The Who shows up in full Tommy mode to kind of finish the song.
So I love the effects and the sort of ambience in the beginning of it that you already mentioned. I also love that near the end, how the song sort of like breaks down and starts deconstructing, and it reminded me of a band like The Who, sort of, falling apart at the end of a really great performance and smashing everything.
Breaking at the seams, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Sound of Music, it's cover, spoiler. It's likely the worst version of the Sound of Music ever. That's all I got to say on this one.
So we're going to wildly diverge here. I think this is the best version of the Sound of Music ever recorded.
Okay, so we may not. I can buy that. Okay, because I'm not a big original version fan, so I'll buy that. Okay. I think you may have swayed me.
Best version of it ever recorded.
I'll go with that. I'm going to disregard my previous comments. Mike and I are completely aligned.
I hate the Sound of Music.
Except this version.
Except this version.
So, and I know the Squatties on a regular basis, big Karma Sutra readers, I'm going to assume, all of them. And so I'm sure all of them have been asking, why hasn't anyone done a doo-wop song about the Karma Sutra? This is another Viv and Neil composition together. And this is done in true 50s doo-wop style, stepping you through the Karma Sutra in not graphic detail, but they at least kind of throw some numbers out and indications of that. So, but it is kind of done in a really fun doo-wop way. And so it's this amalgamation of doo-wop and the Karma Sutra, and pretty crazy and fun.
My note on this is surf sex.
I think it matches my description pretty well.
It does.
So possibly one of the best titles on the album is The Rhinocrathic Oaths is the next one. This is a little bit more spoken word, a very kind of strange story. An interesting piece in terms of a composition, but didn't light me up as much as a lot of other stuff on this album.
So this to me sort of reminded me of like a jam track, like just the band sort of playing together and coming up with stuff. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm a huge Prince fan, and Prince has a song that appeared on his much, much, much debated and maligned album Crystal Ball, which as revenge should be my recommendation because it's 5 discs. Um, but on Crystal Ball, one of my absolute favorite tracks on that album, and I like that album, by the way, just to piss people off, we made it this far. One of my favorite tracks on that is a jam track with him and Morris Day called Chlorine Bacon Skin. It's like 15 minutes long. This, to me, drew a big parallel to that.
Yeah, and I think if we go back and carefully listen to the intro and the outro, they probably do introduce Prince as well. So
He's in there somewhere.
Possibly. Or easily added, if nothing else. So on side 4, we actually now get Roger Ruskin Spear, who's another member of the Bonzo band. So most of the compositions from the Bonzos came from Neil or Viv. On this side, we actually get 2 compositions from Roger Ruskin Spear. And Roger was the architect of the robots that they used in that, and the explosive expert of the Bonzo Dog Doodah band. And so Shirt is the first time we hear from more from Roger. And for Shirt, we get a lot of this is a much more kind of spoken word, almost newscast of somebody stopping people to have them talk about shirts on the street and then being highly confused. And then it gets kind of strange at the end, and then the Viv Elvis thing shows up at the end of it. So this is a very kind of strange amalgamation of a lot of things going on. Very creative, super fun. Shirt is a Roger composition, and I liked it.
Yeah, it's strange, like you said, but it's a song that I enjoyed as well.
So then we move into Mickey's Son and Daughter, which is a cover, largely instrumental at the beginning. And then there are some lyrics, and indeed it's about Mickey and Minnie having children. Again, kind of done a little bit more the music hall kind of way. This song's always had a very kind of special place for me because I did not know this originally because I was exposed to this song before I was exposed to the Bonzos. Back in the day, a young Kelly in northern Indiana, the local college had on the PBS had a radio station. Had a show on the local PBS television station that was called Beyond Our Control. And it was basically college kids putting together little skits and doing those types of things. And when it would end, the end credits played Mickey's Sons and Daughter. The instrumental portion of this song was the ending credit to Beyond Our Control. And so when I finally found the Bonzos and heard this song, I'm like, I absolutely know where I heard this music from at the beginning. Pretty fun music at the fun. Again, it gets a little bit more into the music hall kind of thing. This is another one of those albums that Viv likely bought in a London sale on the street. Said, "Oh, this sounds pretty good."
The beginning kind of sounds like a riff on the Jeopardy theme song.
Yeah, I can see that.
And the mixing, once it gets into the actual song, is interesting because you have the music that's, at least the version of it that I listen to, the music is panned entirely to one side and the vocals entirely to the other.
Yeah, they do some interesting mixed things. Absolutely. Okay, so now, gang, we all need to remember that the political correctness in 1966 through 1970 was different than it is in current day. So as we move into blind
just remember that it's Kelly bringing you these questionable album choices, not me.
Yeah, so for the record, no member of the Bonzo Dog Doodah band has ever burned down a church or stabbed anyone to death.
That you know of.
Yeah, that's been documented. So Blind Date, Viv Stanchel composition, kind of a fun song, and it builds up to the blind date. He's going on the blind date, and he ends up that his blind date is with a pygmy, which is an interesting plot twist to it. Probably not a song that would be developed in current day.
No.
But kind of fun. And this was, again, this was not a Bonzo song, but this was Viv Stanchel, and the backing band was called the Big Grunt from that. So this is where that came from. So not a bad song, but a little cringeworthy for me on some aspects, but it came from a different time.
Yeah, I can see where elements of this wouldn't fly today if this was written today. It did make me think, though, have you ever been on a blind date, Kelly?
I have not. Fun fact for the squatties out there, no blind dates for Kelly. Have you?
Sounds like we need to change that.
Let me check with the wife.
Let's start a blind date for Kelly contest.
Have you been on a blind date?
No, well, I was thinking about it. No, I haven't, but I was on a date that was sort of like a blind date when I was in high school, and I'm not going to say anyone's names in this. When I was in high school, I saw this girl who struck my fancy, I will say. So there was a guy I sort of kind of knew, and he seemed to know her. Like he said hi to her. So I was like, hey, who's that girl? So he starts telling me, and he's like, why? Are you interested in her? And I, in very graphic detail, said yes. But
Good
in a
move.
longer,
Yeah.
in a
Solid.
longer, much more graphic way. Then he informed me that that girl was his girlfriend.
Oops.
This is a guy who was much, much bigger than me, and I also just didn't want to get kicked out of school again for fighting. So I was like, I decided, and he was a nice guy, so I wasn't trying to be a dick. So I decided I was going to try and defuse the situation in the best way possible and say, no, not her, the girl who was with her. Now, if I didn't know that that was his girlfriend, how do I know which one he was referring to? But he bought it, and when they came back around, he was expecting me to ask out this other girl, who I honestly hadn't even bothered to take note of. So, because, you know, that was just the cover story. So I had to ask out this girl and ended up going out on 2 dates with this girl who I did not know in any way. So it was basically like a blind date.
And she wasn't a pygmy, right?
No. And it was interesting because I intentionally, so I had no interest in this girl. So I felt, as I do sometimes, I make decisions that don't make sense to anyone but me. In my mind, intentionally torpedoing and bombing that date as best as I could was the only solution. So that included telling her that I had a unwanted sexual encounter with characters from Sesame Street, and I had a childhood friend of mine who is a female show up at our date with a group of her friends, slap me in the face, and start screaming at me about how I left her at home with the baby. I got a second date.
Wow. So
yeah,
there's a lot to unpack there.
yeah, I got a second date, and so this is pre-proliferation of cell phones. Cell phones existed, but they were like big bricks. And I did not have a cell phone. So you had to like keep people's numbers written down on things. So I lost her number. My plan was just to call her and cancel our second date, since somehow all of that was not off-putting to her. So, and by the way, this was a double date with the guy and his girlfriend who I had spoken about, just to make it more awkward. Since somehow I didn't bomb the date well enough, and she wanted to go out with me again, my plan was to just call her up and cancel before the second date, and I lost her number. So that's how I ended up going on the second date.
Again, no blind dates for me.
Yeah, no blind dates. But fun little thing to the story. So apparently she did decide she didn't want to go out with me anymore. In between those 2 dates, I guess she had some time to reflect on what happened, decided not to go out with me anymore, was concerned about how I would take it. So asked this guy, who again, I sort of barely knew, to break it to me so that she didn't have to. And they couldn't find me while we were on the date because I was in the bathroom with another girl. So needless to say, I got over it pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm glad you processed that as well as you did.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, I got through it.
Well done. A big relief to all the squatties out there.
Yeah.
So we move again to the rare Roger Ruskin Spear song, Trouser Press. So I'm not a big fan of the fourth side of this album. Trouser Press is the one moment that starts to sway me a little bit more. Again, we're going back to a different time. The introduction is, I would say, the gentleman introducing the song's slightly effeminate, in an overproduced kind of way, but it is crazy fun at the beginning because he's like, "Come on, everybody, clap your hands," and they start to clap their hands horribly, super sad from there. And then they get into the Trouser Press song, which has actually got a little bit of punch to it. A lot of stuff going on with it, so it's kind of fun there. And it talks about a prefabricated concrete coal bunker, which is, I'm going to guess, the first time those lyrics have ever occurred anywhere. But it's kind of a punchy little song and kind of fun. I actually, of this side, this is my favorite song on side 4.
I like this song, and the off-time clapping in the beginning made me laugh out loud like way too hard.
It It's super well done in a really fun way. And then the album wraps up with a song called Slush by Neil Innes. Again, this is almost Bonzo ambient again. There's this very kind of strange laugh loop at the end that as you get to the end of the song, you're like, okay, has the needle, because again, folks, we're listening to this on vinyl as God intended. Has the needle stuck on this album? Do I need to go over and address something? I'm not really certain. It is a much more of an ambient kind of execution. Pretty interesting song for me. Again, a lot more amazing stuff occurred earlier in this album, but not a bad way to finish it. It's no trouser press, but an okay way to end the album.
I love the loop of the laughing at the end of it. Now, I hate to talk about myself and do anything that would sound like it's self-promotion.
Of course.
But for anyone who doesn't know, I am in a band. Our first EP that we ever recorded was called The Valley of Darkness, which you can listen to remastered on our YouTube channel, but I digress because I don't want to promote myself. There's a version of that we've never released that instead of ending with the crackling vinyl sound, the crackling vinyl sounds at the beginning and end were a last-minute addition to replace how it originally ended, which was a loop of a laugh, and it was Charles Manson's laugh that was recorded during a part of his trial. So ultimately, I opted not to include that, and that's why the crackling vinyl at the beginning and end are on there. Because we initially replaced it with the vinyl crackling, and then it didn't make sense just at the end. It would have to be at the beginning as well.
Good choice. Good choice.
So, but that made me think of that, which is something I hadn't thought about for a long time.
So my hunch is I took you to a very different place musically with the Bonzo Dog Doo-Dah and History of the Bonzos.
Correct.
So it's never my goal to give you something to listen to that makes you sad, but I did not know, because there is definitely got to have kind of a point of view and be kind of cool with this stuff in there. And this is very diverse in kind of what goes on in it. But I'm very excited to hear that you actually did enjoy it.
I really enjoyed it, yeah.
There is a lot of other material. I think for the blog post, I will throw Joffrey Daniel on there and a couple other things too, because there's just tons of really fun stuff out there to listen to that's not reflected. My brother does noises for the Talkies, which was actually the first Bonzo single. It's not reflected on this album. Another good one to put on. There's just tons of stuff.
They also have a song called Death Cab for Cutie, which
yes.
a very successful and popular band used as their band name.
Yes. And another super fun song, and in the spirit of some of the stuff that we talked about tonight. So it's good. So, gang, squatties, if you go out onto YouTube and search Bonzo Dog Doo-Dah Band, you're going to find lots of fun stuff to listen to. It is a challenge, because I think on iTunes, History of the Bonzos is not available as a download. I think that's why you had to struggle a little bit.
Correct. It's actually not available at all, apparently.
Yeah, which is a shame, because this is a great cross section. But find some stuff out there, whether it's on YouTube or whatever. You're gonna laugh. You're gonna have some fun. Canyons of Your Mind. Find that. Listen to it. It's pretty amazing from there.
If you are a music streamer and have a subscription service, the bulk of these songs, other than the side project tracks, the bulk of these songs are all available. And there are a number of Bonzo compilations that are available, just not this particular one.
And for fun, you can also search on Neil Innes and find he did a song about Brexit, and he's got some songs about our president as well. So there's some interesting things. So lots of interesting things for you folks to listen to on there. So this was a big ask. Thank you for getting through the voluminous work that was the History of the Bonzos. I'm fully prepared to deal with the consequences of my actions.
Not this time, but at some point, we're going to break out that 15-song, 3.5-hour album.
Just know I got Sandinista in my pocket.
There was that album, which we'll get into when we eventually do cover it. There's a great article where they chastise the band for putting out an album that is that long, because they say that it's disrespectful of their fans' day.
Much like the length of this podcast. So, I will again declare this fun. I'm glad you enjoyed the album. I'm glad I was able to expose you to something you weren't familiar with, much like you did for our last review as well. So thank you for that. And at this point, Mike and I have not shared notes on what's going to happen next. Maybe we'll go back to another Mel List one. We'll see. but we'll sort that out. And I don't have anything else to add for this week unless you do, Mike.
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
So it's